apologies for the last meeting and our inability to get the YouTube feed connected. After a very brief discussion with the committee members from the town of Paradise and the city of Chico, it was decided that in the interest of transparency, that meeting would be canceled and that we would reschedule for today. So today's meeting is essentially a revisit of what we had hoped to accomplish during the first meeting last month. Again, our apologies. For the folks on the phone or live streaming on YouTube, listening to the meeting, should there be an upset today with the YouTube live stream, just go back to the agenda and click on the Zoom link, and that will bring you into the meeting as an active participant. That doesn't mean you have to say anything. You can just be on mute, but that'll give you another avenue to connect to the meeting should something go wrong with the YouTube channel. So I hope we have an adequate contingency plan today and shouldn't experience any hiccups. With that, wanted to welcome everyone. Really looking forward to this opportunity to work with the town of Paradise and the city of Chico in exploring the opportunity, although there's a lot of work ahead of us to see whether or not this opportunity has real merit, but the opportunity to develop a regionalization project between the town of Paradise and the city of Chico. So with that, we have formed the Paradise Sewer Regionalization Project Advisory Committee, or SERPAC, and that project advisory committee is made up of two council members from the town of Paradise, Mayor Steve Crowder and Vice Mayor Jody Jones, as well as two council members from the city of Chico, and that's Mayor Steve Crowder, excuse me, Mayor Andrew Coolidge, and Vice Mayor Casey Reynolds, all of which are with us today and are the active participants in this committee. So with that, I want to also introduce Kevin Phillips, the town manager for Town of Paradise. And Kevin, if you wouldn't mind introducing the staff that we have with us today.
Sure, thanks Clint, and thank you everybody for being here on this kind of kickoff meeting and very important project for the Town of Paradise. So from the Town of Paradise staff, we have Mark Maddox, Public Works Director, Katie Simmons, Disaster Recovery Director, Dina and Melanie from the Clerk's Office, and Ross Gilb, our new Administrative Services Director. And then part of the team also is John Butts from HDR Engineering.
Thank you, Kevin. And with us from the city of Chico is Mark Orm, the city's manager. Mark, would you mind introducing your staff?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. With us today, we have City Clerk Debbie Presson and also Public Works Director over Engineering, Brendan Ottoboni.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to open it up to committee members formally. Again, Mayor Steve Crowder, Vice Mayor Jody Jones, Mayor Andrew Coolidge, and Vice Mayor Casey Reynolds. I don't know if any of you would like to provide any opening statements before we move on to some of the presentations.
I'd just like to say I'm glad to see the process moving forward and happy to participate.
Thank you, Mayor.
Hi, this is Steve Crowder. I just want to thank you for hosting this and let you know, Paradise is excited about this partnership and we're ready to get going. Thanks.
Thank you too, Mayor. All right, so we have some presentations. One that'll be provided by Katie Simmons with the Town of Paradise, and then that followed closely and in concert with John Butts of HDR Engineering. Purposes of those presentations are really just to get the committee members up to speed, as well as the public, on the activities that have occurred thus far, and then give you a sense as to where we're going and how we're going to get there. So Katie, if you are ready.
All right, I am working on this, but I'm having some trouble, but here we go. Good afternoon, everybody. Katie Simmons, Disaster Recovery Director for the Town of Paradise. Really happy to be here to get this process going as well. We've prepared a presentation that will sort of walk us through the steps to get us to where we are today. And then John is going to take us into what is currently happening in the field right now. So what we're talking about with the Paradise Sewer Project is a sewer service area that you can see here highlighted in yellow on this map. It's a collection area that is comprised primarily of Skyway and Clark, connected by Pearson. With some exceptions, you can take a look at all of the parcels that are included in the sewer service area on paradisesewer.com, which we're going to walk through in just a moment. So why did Paradise need a sewer pre-fire? For many properties, perpetual on-site treatment and dispersal was not sustainable due to high groundwater, limited land availability, and poor soils. And these constraints really forced the town to self-govern and limit multifamily housing density in the town and commercial operations that had high water usage, such as restaurants. So I know, having worked at the Paradise Chamber many years ago, that being on septic was a very costly endeavor for a lot of businesses that were looking to locate here in Paradise. So this is a sample showing what is happening with the septic systems in Paradise. You can see the red highlighted areas are failed or recently failing. Purple, 5-year failure expectancy, 10-year failure expectancy in blue. And then the checkbox area is constrained parcels due to high groundwater. So you can see there's a lot of activity happening here. The septic systems are not able to sustain what the community needs for recovery. So why do we need a sewer now as we are in recovery from the Camp Fire? We all know that the Camp Fire caused overnight a significant population loss for the town of Paradise. We say here 83%. We also say 84% in some cases. We know that the town's ability to repopulate will be dependent upon our ability to rebuild our housing stock and then be able to support that repopulation with the businesses and commercial enterprises and jobs and all of that. So while the city of Chico's population increased approximately 20%, the region-wide loss exceeds 16,000 residents. We know from the recently released economic impact study from the Camp Fire, we lose a lot economically when we lose folks. And so we want to make sure that we don't continue to see this disaster extend as we lose people who aren't able to find housing here. City wastewater flows increased due to the Camp Fire, yet revenues lagged because a lot of folks were sharing households. The presence or absence of a sewer project will shape the prospects for a full recovery from the Camp Fire, no doubt. The town engaged HDR Engineering to complete phase 1 of the project, and now phase 2, which we are in currently. Phase 1 was the pre-environmental impact report, engineering regionalization study. John Butts with HDR Engineering is going to speak here momentarily, and he's going to show you where to find all of these documents on paradisesewer.com. Phase 2, which we're in currently, is the environmental impact report engineering phase. So phase 1 really looked at collection, treatment, and dispersal, and developed a couple of different project options for the town to consider. 1 was a regional connection, 2, no project, 3, local treatment plant. Looking at all of these options, they did analyze them based upon their economic impact, social, environmental, implementational, and operational. The regional connection scored the highest across the board. You can see her on the slide. For economic, it had the lowest capital and net present value costs. For social, lowest community impacts during and after construction. Environmental, least probable environmental impacts. Implementation, fewest permits needed. Operational, least complicated to operate, and we would benefit obviously from the experienced Chico staff operating the Chico Water Pollution Control Plant. Regional projects are preferred in the state of California. We had support going into our presentation to the city of Chico on February 2nd from Congressman LaMoffa and Assemblyman Gallagher. We're looking at other successful projects that are regional, such as the 3 listed here. And then there are supportive policies. State Water Board policies, for example, encourage regionalization projects. And the City of Chico Municipal Code contains procedures for regionalization. I'll walk through a couple of decision points that led us to this meeting today on December 8th, 2020. The Paradise Town Council selected the regional alternative as the primary solution to be reviewed in phase 2 environmental impact report. They directed staff to secure additional funding for the EIR, including a grant to be made available to the city of Chico for their scope of work, and to work with the regional board to form a Brown Act compliant project committee consisting of Town of Paradise and City of Chico elected officials. And we are currently conducting that first meeting today. The City of Chico then met on February 2nd and agreed to unanimously authorize the city manager to execute an agreement with the Town of Paradise, approved by the city attorney, of course, to facilitate work and grant funded payments relating to the city's ability and needs to accept a connection from the Town of Paradise. So that cooperative work agreement is currently circulating, and then to select representation to participate in this Central Valley Regional Water Quality Control Board led project committee, as I mentioned. And then I'm going to go ahead and click over, and hopefully John can unmute himself, and he is going to take us from this slide forward.
Great. Thank you, Katie. And can you hear me?
Yep.
Good. Great. So yes, we're in the EIR process right now. And on this slide and the next, we summarize all the steps involved in the EIR. I want to take a minute with this slide up to summarize where we are currently. In future meetings, we'll likely have, from my staff, Leslie Tice, who leads the EIR work, probably attend some of these meetings and give you some additional updates. So we have started step 1 here, preparing the project and alternatives descriptions, building on the work that was done last year. The NOP, the notice of preparation, step 2, is being prepared right now and under review. That notifies the public about the process that's about to happen. There are Native American tribal notifications required, step 3 here by AB 52. We've begun to draft those letters to go out to the tribes in the area. Number 4, the public scoping meeting. The very first part of the EIR is to have a scoping time period where the public gets to tell us the kinds of issues that they would like analyzed in the EIR, the scope of the EIR. That includes a public meeting. And as you'll see in a few minutes, all of those items in the meeting itself will all be posted on paradisesewer.com. And finally, the other item underway is step 5 here, initiate field surveys and studies. Those have started. We've had biologists out doing Swainson hawk, aquatic habitat, and cultural surveys, and those will likely continue through the early summer. Next slide. This is the remaining steps there leading to the final EIR. That will all take us through next year. We have other supporting activities, engineering analyses, some work such as today with the committee, outreach that we'll be helping with, including the website, and then some general financing support to the town. Next. We often asked about the benefits to Chico relative to this solution. And I wanted to just touch on a few of them. The wastewater systems do represent economies of scale. As more people are served, the cost per person for treatment goes down and everyone benefits. Second, there's revenue to the city that would accrue from a regional agreement, which could provide financial resources to the city for infrastructure projects in the city's long-term capital improvement plan. Third, regionalization will increase the city's footing to secure future financial assistance. We're working with Clint, the regional board, and others looking at financing that could help both the town and the city. And finally, regional recovery can equate to a stronger economy for the town, the city, the county, the whole region. Next slide. In terms of specific funding, we have the town had received a grant from the Department of Financial or Division of Financial Assistance, part of the Water Board. And that was awarded for the second phase of the environmental impact report, where we are right now. Out of that, $300,000 was carved out and made available to the city of Chico specifically to perform work as a vendor to the town of Paradise. This helped achieve the objective that existing City of Chico ratepayers do not subsidize the town's efforts and the city's efforts to study this Paradise sewer project. Next. Specifically, what will happen within that Chico scope of work? Things like an analysis of the existing and future flows to the water pollution control plant, WPCP, that's the name of Chico's facility, along with the hydraulic capacity and a process model, lots of engineering work, looking at regulatory requirements and improvements needed, modifying the facility planning report, and then analyzing the potential Paradise Sewer Project connection fee for the town to connect and receive wastewater treatment from the city. And the objective here is to inform the city and town of the overall impacts of project collaboration concurrent with the EIR. And we anticipate that a lot of the results of this scope of work that you see here on screen will be brought specifically to this committee for your benefit. Next. There are a number of questions that have come up along the way, and we were anticipating that might come to the project committee about the EIR, other things, and the public itself. Listed a few of those questions here, but on the website that I'm going to show you, we have extensive list of FAQs, frequently asked questions, and answers. So I'll hold off and show you those in a minute. Next slide. Now, specifically for this committee, what we have anticipated is that would be the focus for the committee would be to, first of all, develop principles of agreement that lead to an intermunicipal agreement between the town and the city. I'm going to come back to that in a second. That would likely be the core focus for the committee, but also to monitor the progress on the EIR and the cooperative work agreement. That's the agreement between the town and the city for that engineering work I just described a minute ago. So the committee will get updates on progress there, and to provide an overall venue for the public to participate, to have updates and hear about this. But it's important to point out that that public venue provided here at this committee is separate from the EIR, which will have its own public process. Next. The principles of agreement, maybe I'll take a minute here to explain what that document is. It consists of these components right here, but what we've seen happen in other places, I've been involved in something similar to this before. A committee such as this develops general agreement on how to address different items. They're principles, general agreements that are then captured in writing and worked on. There's a set of them to work through as a committee. And then those principles would be reviewed by the town council, city council. And with overall agreement on those principles, then they could be turned over to attorneys from the town and the city to actually craft into a legal intermunicipal agreement. So the attorneys get in and get all the legalese in, but the committee really develops the principles behind it. So therefore, principles of agreement. You can see 11 items here. The first 8 items are actually defined in the City of Chico's municipal code. It has a section that deals specifically with how to handle an entity such as the town that sits outside the city's city limits and system. So that's of great advantage to us. And so these 8 items will of course be addressed. And then there's 3 other items here that we've listed that would likely be addressed. And the committee would very likely in the course of its work come up with additional items here to cover under the principles of agreement. Next. So just focusing a little bit more on the public involvement part, we see really 3 key areas and tools, if you will. One is this SERPAC, this committee. The second is the EIR itself and its process. I'll touch on that in a second. And then third is that website that we're going to use extensively to convey information to the public and to hear from them. Next. Little timeline here on that involvement. These are actual EIR items here shown in blue. I mentioned earlier that scoping comment period is coming up here in May. Late this year, the draft EIR would come out and there'd be a notice about that. And then we'd go through a public comment period to hear from the public and just really any concerned involved stakeholders to give us comments on that draft EIR. Then there's a response to every one of those comments that will be provided in writing, heading towards a final EIR in the middle of next year. Next. Okay, so here, well, maybe I'll pause there, Clint, before I go to the website and just see if we have any questions so far.
Do you have any questions by the committee members? Hearing none. Any feedback or anything we missed from staff, Town of Paradise or City of Chico? Anything you'd think would be important to add?
Clint, looks like Deborah Lucero has her hand up.
We'll get to the public in just a second. So hearing none. Deborah, do you have a question?
I just had I'm sorry, I think I'm getting an echo here. I had a question on the public meetings, when they would be held. I saw that there was public comment, but I wondered if a schedule had been developed.
Is that specific to the EIR?
The scoping meetings.
Okay.
Yes, so this is John Butts again. So the scoping meeting has a prescribed period of time that it'll happen. We don't have the specific date yet. It's looking like it'll be right around late May. And we'll be giving plenty of notice. And what happens during that period, I believe it's roughly 30 days, about a month's time. During that period, you're open for comments. And then during that period, there is an actual public meeting held where we take in person live additional comments. But through that whole period, stakeholders can make comments and we'll be providing a lot of information about how to make those comments.
Does that answer your question, Deborah?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
John, this is Jody Jones. I just wanted to say that I thought you did a really good job, you and Katie, summarizing all the work the town's done so far and where we're going. Having been involved with this since the recent beginning, I thought it was really clear and very concise and very open to the public, which I'm concerned about. One question I had for you, it looks like the public comment period might span the holidays, December, January. I just want to make sure that we're not doing that because people are not focused on things like a sewer system during Christmas.
Very good point. And we have latitude about how long to make that period. So we can make sure that we extend it if need be. If it were to start before, we can extend it afterwards, or maybe we'll decide to not even start it till after the holidays. So very good point.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, there's opportunity, I think sort of a standard is, 30 days. We see that a lot, but more than enough opportunity to make that a 60-day public comment period or 45-day public comment period, as John is saying. So hopefully that there's plenty of flexibility there to accommodate the town and city's wishes and how we want to publish that comment period. Okay, John.
Okay, and I believe you can see this. Oh, my SQL person has said that the draft EIR comment period typically is 60 days, so we'll have plenty of time. Scoping is 30 days. I'm getting live updates as we speak. That's great. Okay, so here's the public website, paradisesewer.com. It has been in existence since before 2017. I'm not exactly sure, maybe even a couple years before then, but it has gone through a major facelift in the last month. And so I did want to take a minute here, and there's a tremendous amount of information here. So I do want to take a little bit of time to show folks what's here. So it starts with an overview of the project. Over here on the right, there's always this quick links to take you to 3 different pieces, and we're going to look at all 3 of those pieces specifically. A description of the components of the project, collection, transport, and treatment from a very high level, kind of big picture. A map then to show the components and where they are, and a little bit more description of the project. Project costs are always of interest, and so here's the current estimate for those costs. This is a fantastic app that's built in that the town created back in the previous work, where anybody can go in, click, put in their address, and it'll tell you immediately whether your specific address parcel is inside that sewer service area or outside the sewer service area. Very nice tool for people to specifically find out if they're in or out of that area. Summary of the benefits of the project, and an overall schedule for the project. And here, of course, we sit in 2021 with the environmental studies heading, as we talked about, through the EIR, outreach going on throughout, and some rough timeframes for design, final design and right-of-way acquisition, and then construction. So that's the broad overview on the first page here. The next is public engagement. So this focuses on how the public can become involved, and the town really truly values that input. There's a summary here of all the different things that had happened, all the various forms of input and communication. And in particular, I want to point out, it says, for more information on the town council and public meetings, click here. And when you do, we have a 12-page PDF that summarizes all of those town council and public meetings and generally what happened in them, all the way back to February of 2015 to the present. So if you really want more of a deep dive into the evolution of this project, you can look at that particular document. Then there's news, media releases, and articles, some links there. Again, submit a comment. I'll be showing you what that looks like, but we constantly give people a link to that spot. A summary of events, and this is a very important one. This advisory committee meetings will be posted here, and there'll always be a link as soon as it's live to the agenda notice that Clint puts out. As time goes on, then these meetings will also be showing up here as previous meetings with links to the minutes and recordings. There will be miscellaneous project meetings that'll also start to get posted. For example, that scoping meeting would show up here once it gets scheduled. We've got a few previous council meetings that had happened at Paradise and Chico, and that takes you to their websites and their materials. And quite a few different activities depending on the person and what method they'd like to get involved. Down here, different links to take you to different places on the website to help you get involved. Next is an environmental page, since that's the focus right now of the project. And there's a nice summary here of the CEQA process, the California Environmental Quality Act, and which is a very involved process. So we thought we should provide a summary here of the major steps, starting with right now, the notice of preparation. Here's that public engagement opportunity coming up in the scoping meeting, on through the draft EIR, on to the final EIR. So here, it's a great summary of all those steps. And then a summary of the key activities that go on during the EIR for those that want to learn a little bit more. Next is this advisory committee. Now, this page is really meant to point to other information. I want to make that clear. The regional board is handling the agendas. The town and the city are storing the materials. So what we're providing here is really a link to the public to find and access those things. So we list you 4 members here and give links to your profiles on your town and city sites. We have the advisory committee meetings themselves, a link here to the YouTube and to the archive that I just showed. So a nice summary of the advisory committee itself. Project materials. This is the history. This is in the real meaty information. First of all, I mentioned during PowerPoint, frequently asked questions, FAQs. So you can see here, there's quite a number of questions we've already posted and written up. And as you click on any one of these, there's a written answer for it. So probably 9 times out of 10 right now, a lot of questions will be answered right here, and we'll be referring people to the FAQs pretty often. And we'll add more to them as we find other questions get frequently asked. There was some reference to this, I think, by Katie. Technical documents, so a lot of historical documents, and they're in reverse chronological order. So starting with the executive summary from HDR's work that finished in December, but also the 6 technical memoranda that went behind or were behind that executive summary, they're all here. And if you want, going back to the 2017 work and all the way, you can see here back to 1983, along with several related links to the town, the city, and the water board. Lots of information there. And then the final page is contact. And there's the usual, address and phone number here if somebody wants to simply use that. But we have this form that people can fill in. We've already started to receive some comments. And the person fills in a number of these fields, and they have a choice in the subject to choose one of 3 things: just a general question, a comment on the EIR if they really want to be specific, or a public comment for the next advisory committee meeting if they want to be part of this particular committee and its meetings. So the person can choose any one of those 3, and then that helps us route their comment to the right person. And they simply fill it in and hit submit. So that's a very quick overview of the revamped public site. Are there any questions or comments?
See if there are any comments from the committee members first, if you don't mind.
No, nothing here. Nicely done, though.
They did a great job on this. One of the more transparent,
just
and
say-
I think easy to understand websites that cover the EIR process and projects like this that I've seen.
This is Steve Crowder. Great presentation. I love that it goes back to 2015. So it just shows everybody how long we've been working on it and how open we've been with it. So I'm really impressed. Thank you.
Yeah, this
Clint,
is Casey. A great job, and I'd love. Great. It's so great that we can send people at any time to there to make comments at any time so they don't have to feel like they have to wait for a particular period on anything. So that's great. Thank you so much.
sorry to interrupt. Clint, it looks like we have a hand raised. Dave Burkick.
Dave?
Dave, you can unmute if you like.
Yes, my septic tank was damaged by the cleanup crew. And I've been waiting for the settlement from PG&E to rebuild. But I know I'm in the lower part of that sewer system. I was just wondering if I rebuild, it's going to cost me a lot to replace the whole septic system. And if I rebuild them, do I have to pay to be hooked up to this sewer system on top of that?
Now, if Mark or Katie, you want to respond to that, or I can.
I have one thought. So I would be happy to connect with you on the damage claim form process for septic damage during debris removal. So that is something I can certainly assist with. And then Mark, do you want to talk about what's possible for construction in the SSA now?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, again, would love to follow up, and especially if the tank was damaged during debris removal. And then for many property owners in the sewer service area, they'll be asking the same question. So thank you for bringing that up. In general, we have not fully decided how the connection process would work. As far as the town's perspective, we are moving forward and trying to seek as much grant funding as possible. But the idea would be to try and incentivize, subsidize, or pay for initial hookups as much as possible as we move forward. But those discussions obviously are not for today, and something we won't know for quite some time, but something that we will continue to monitor and be able to communicate as more information becomes available, probably after the environmental impact phase report is completed.
Yes, but it makes it very difficult for a person to decide what they're going to do if they don't know how much it's going to cost, if they have to pay for the connection, and then we have to pay for the sewer septic tank replacement also.
Yeah, Clint, I don't know if you want to build on anything I said there, but you know, we're really working and can empathize. It's a difficult question we get asked all the time. I need to rebuild now, but is this sewer going to happen? You know, I don't want to duplicate costs for the same function, which I think at a high level really encapsulates the sense of urgency as much as we can on a 5-year, decade-long project that we need to move forward quickly for Paradise's recovery.
Yeah, I would echo Mark's comments, and yeah, as an initial step, I'd recommend you reaching out to Katie Simmons and talking with her about some options, at least initial options that you can take. But as Mark alluded to, you know, the project to connect, you know, the town to the city, there are a lot of hurdles and uncertainty associated with this project. You know, we've got to move through the EIR. There's a lot of design pieces that need to come into play. You know, if everything works out just right, there'll be a project at the end of the day, along with some the necessary funding to implement that project or to kick it off. But that's several years down the road, and so I certainly wouldn't want you, you know, waiting on this particular project in order to make your decision. Probably best to reach out to Katie, see what we can do as an interim measure, and then follow this project closely to track its progress. Appreciate your concern.
Yes, well, I also wondered, I live down below Pearson, in that little area off of Sierra Park on a little road called Crawford Lane. And I wondered why that section wasn't even included, because most of the other private properties, residential properties, were not included above me or around me that much. Just seems like that one area has been picked on to be part of this, and I don't see the need myself.
So Dave, this is Kevin Phillips with the town. For your septic issues too, you can reach out to our housing advocates here. They can maybe reach out and get some grant funding for you available for that if it's not covered through the claim form to help with your septic issues. So I think we can find some solutions for you as we're moving through this EIR process that can help you get back to rebuilding as quickly as possible.
Okay.
Thank you, Dave. Ms. Marvin? Ms. Marvin, do you have a question? You want to unmute your microphone?
Thank you. You answered some of the questions, but I would like to know is, don't we need to know more about the costs to individuals as well as general tax costs before we get too far into the project to make sure that the public is as on board as you hope them to be? Thank you.
Yeah, so you have a valid question. A lot of the studies that John Butts was referring to will, in addition to understanding and analyzing the environmental impacts, also understanding a lot of the engineering and cost components. That's all part of this project, so to speak. The initial phases are really designed to understand all the nooks and crannies, and that certainly includes costs. And then once those are understood, then that's sort of rolled up into, might call a final project proposal.
And will that include tax costs as well?
It'll include an assessment of all the financial pictures. So what not only are the fundamental project costs, cost of construction, but also any grant funds, any low interest loans, any assessments. All of those things will be worked out, through the development and analysis of this regionalization project. So there'll be full transparency. Everyone will understand exactly what's at stake, what it means to the town of Paradise residents, those that need to hook up and those that don't, as well as the city of Chico residents.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any more questions on anything that John has described before we move on? Okay. John, do we want to circle back a little bit and maybe talk in some more detail about the principles of agreement?
Yeah, and Clint thought I might share a little bit as an example. I had the opportunity to work with a 2x2x2x2 committee. It was about 10 years ago, maybe a little longer, regarding a wastewater project. And it was the city of Sacramento, 2 city council members, 2 city of West Sac city council members, 2 Yolo County board members, supervisors, and 2 Sacramento County board supervisors. So eight total. You have 4. We had 8 there. It was about the city of West Sacramento getting out of the wastewater business. It had its own treatment plant and joining a regional system. And so for a year, I got to support that, much like we're doing here, that process. And so it involved exactly what we've started to talk about. We met once a month. There was this living document called the Principles of Agreement. And it started out with just topics, and then meeting by meeting, we would take individual topics on. In this case, Clint will be talking us through those. There'll be input, if you wish, from staff, discussion, and then some discussion among the committee members. Yes, this is a solid principle here. Some of them I think are going to be very straightforward. They just simply say, provide a report once a year, or allow access if asked for. And then others will be more involved, like things around the cost of these items. And so I watched that proceed. It did take about a year to get through that. With that document finished, the principles of agreement, it then did go, as I mentioned, to 4 different governing bodies. They all approved the principles, and then they turned it over to the attorneys who drafted it into an actual, in that case, it was called a contract to serve. And West Sacramento ultimately joined Sac Regional County Sanitation District and abandoned their existing wastewater treatment plant and connected into the Sacramento system. So yeah, it was a very successful process, and it seemed to work really well to work through those items.
Yeah, I'll just say, I think, for the purposes of this regionalization project, the council members, the town council and the city council are just very, very fortunate to have the team that they do working on this. The folks that I've been working with at the town and the city and HDR, I think, they've just done an amazing job setting this project up so that it can be, so we can walk through this in a transparent manner that involves the public, and quite frankly, have the experience and the horsepower of those lead staff at both municipalities and HDR kind of leading the way. It's going to take a lot of effort. There's no question about it. The start of these projects is always the easy end, right? We start wading in, that's the exciting time. That's where everybody's energized and ready to go. There'll become that time where, things get a little difficult, whether it's we're negotiating a particular piece or, maybe experiencing, some public discourse. There'll be a lot of those little pieces along the way. But I do feel very strongly that we have probably the best team we could put together from the municipalities and HDR to get us through this process. So I'm definitely looking forward to it. One of the things I did want to mention too is that this framework, this principles of agreement that John's laid out here, this 1 through 7, we are really hoping will serve as kind of the framework for these meetings moving forward. So we'll identify some of the easier ones that we'll want to chip away at first. And then, as we get comfortable with one another, as the town and the city committee members develop that rapport, we'll start wading into some more of the challenging ones. And along the way, both the town council members, committee members, and the city, my hope is that you'll be aided by the professional staff that you have on board here today. That includes your managers and your public works directors and others, so that as questions come up, you may turn to them for guidance. Maybe that happens between meetings so that you're prepared for the meeting, or maybe some of those questions or discussions are just had during these meetings. But that's the general thought, is that we would use this as kind of the framework for facilitating these meetings moving forward. We'll pencil that out in a little bit, maybe more of a clearer path with a timeline. Some of these, we may assign a shorter time frame to get through. Other ones, maybe 2 or 3 meetings might be necessary to get through. Other ones maybe be taking in parallel. So, where it makes sense, we'll try to make as much headway as we can without sort of getting too far ahead of the EIR process. There are other things that we need to take into account as we work through this. So with that, I just wanted to see if any of the council members or committee members, I should say, have any questions about anything that John's discussed here today, the principles of agreement, and that those principles of agreement would later lend to that intermunicipal agreement that contains that legalese, legal language that both the city and town councils will review.
Clint, this is Jody Jones. I really like the format you're proposing. I think it'll help keep us organized and keep us on track for actually making progress. I find these Zoom meetings to be very difficult for discussion. And I think if we're going to come to agreement on principles, I would really like to be in the same room with the Chico mayor and vice mayor. I know the governor is proposing to open the state June 15th, but as soon as you can, even if other people are on Zoom, I think that the committee members should be in the same room so we could actually talk back and forth.
Certainly take that into account. I know, having these discussions over Zoom is cumbersome at times, and certainly understand the benefits of open discussion in person. So we'll see what we can do to make that happen in a reasonable short time frame.
Thank you.
Any other questions by committee members? Concerns or comment, suggestions?
Oh, none here.
Clint,
Thank you, Mayor.
Clint,
Yes.
this is John again. Maybe to elaborate a little bit on one thing. So the city will be embarking on its own engineering work and financial work through that $300,000 that had been set aside. The results of that will be critical for items in particular 9, 10, and 11 on this list. So that's another part of the timing here is we'll chip away at the things that don't require that work. And we can probably lay some groundwork for items 9, 10, 11, but we won't really be able to grab onto those until those results are in.
That's a great point. Brendan or Mark, do you have anything you'd like to add that we may have missed or maybe not provided enough detail or clarification on?
Nothing for me, Brendan.
I'll just kind of piggyback on what John just referenced, the city's scope for our analysis of our plant being critical. And so we're working on the city attorney reviewing our agreement right now. So once we get that executed, that'll really be the trigger to get into contract with our consulting firm. And ultimately, that will analyze much of the mitigation measures, essentially, that will be associated with accepting the additional flow. So we're looking forward to getting that going, and we'll try and turn that around as soon as we possibly can. So other than that, I think, again, great job, and happy to be a part of this team and see this process go through. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Kevin, Mark, or Katie, you have anything you want to add?
None for me. Thank you very much.
Yep, all good here. Thank you so much to everybody on the call.
We're good here too.
Perfect, thank you. Just want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to weigh in. Okay, with that, we have a few more items to get through on today's meeting, recognizing we may end a little short. Next, I wanted to verify the 2021 meeting calendar with the committee members. If everyone has access to their calendars. Currently, we're scheduled to meet on the second Monday of every month between 1 and 3 p.m. I know it's hard to schedule too far out in advance, but if we could get just a general consensus from the committee members as to whether or not you think that makes sense, or if you'd like to propose some alternative dates or times. This really is your meeting, so I want to make sure that that you are accommodated.
That seems to work fine with my schedule.
Okay.
That's good for me as well.
Okay. Mayor Crowder?
It's perfect.
I'm good for second Monday, other than I was just gonna say I have something planned in September on the second Monday, but I think for the rest of the year, I'm good.
Okay.
As of now.
Thank you for that, Vice Mayor. Mayor Crowder, were you?
I'm good with it.
Okay, thank you so much. So we'll send out calendar holds to everyone for the remainder of the year, just so that you have that reminder. And then as we get closer to each of those meetings, the agenda will follow those meeting invites. This is also the time now for public forum. If any members of the public are attending the meeting today have anything they'd like to add or mention or make aware of to the committee members, this would be the time to do that. Do you have any comments from the public? John? John, you can unmute yourself. And
yeah, this is John Stonebreaker from Magalia. I just wanted to say that there are more than 3,000 homes still up here, roughly 8,000 people living up here. And we are very encouraged by the prospect of having the sewer connection in Paradise bring businesses and population back to the town. That our quality of life here has greatly diminished since services in town were destroyed in the fire. And the committee should consider the benefits to people, not just Paradise and Chico residents, but the impacts on residents of the unincorporated areas throughout the county, especially on the Upper Ridge, and the benefits that this regionalization project could provide to the entire region's recovery from the Camp Fire.
thank you for that, John. Are there any other comments from the public to the committee members? Hearing none, we'll move to the final agenda item, which is really the closing committee remarks. The best way to work our way through this, the mayors and vice mayors, but certainly love to hear from you. I think the staff and the managers from both municipalities been working really hard to set this project up. If you have any feedback for us on the style of the meeting, the order in which we took the events, anything we're missing that should be included as part of this meeting, I would love to hear from you in addition to any other comments you may have.
I think it's moving along fine. I think obviously at some point it'll be good to be in the room with our counterparts. But, I think you guys are doing a great job so far with the initial information. So thank you.
Okay. Appreciate that. Vice Mayor Reynolds.
I would ditto the same. I'm more than willing to do in-person meetings, and probably at some point we only may need 15 minutes or so to get us all on Zoom and going. 30 minutes of staff time and everybody sitting on hold is probably a little bit much for the long term. So that would be my only maybe constructive criticism feedback.
Absolutely. Appreciate that. Mayor Crowder. You're on mute.
Yeah. Very happy with the progress that where we're going, and I'm looking forward to being able to meet in person too. I think that will help the process. And I'm really encouraged, and I want to thank you and the city of Chico for working with us.
And I'll echo that. I'm excited about this partnership with Chico. And I think that all of the staff, the Water Board, Chico, Paradise, HDR, you've done a great job so far. And I look forward to seeing what you're going to bring to us next month.
Thank you. And any final words from town managers Kevin Phillips or Mark Orm before we adjourn?
And for me, thank you very much. Thank you everybody on the call. And I think we're moving in the right direction. And I just am very appreciative of the transparency that's moving along. So thank you.
Yeah, I would agree with Kevin. It's all about collaboration. And I think we found a lot of that over the past number of years, and it's going to continue. And I anticipate that if there is a solution, if there is an opportunity to seize, that we'll be able to do it with this team. So thank you.
I appreciate that. I appreciate everyone's time today, taking time out of your busy schedules. We will adjourn early today as we anticipated. And we'll tee up next meeting 1 month from now. And hope to see all of you then. Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end this meeting. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bob Chow, you may have to end this meeting.
Tell you what, I'll roll the host back to you just so.
Yeah.
I've not done this part before. Here you go.
Great, thank you. All right, stop the recording.
Stop YouTube.